whiteboard in the meantime. So here we go. Quadratic formula. Now, first thing we got to get out of the way. What is a quadratic? What is a quadratic? All right, you're gonna hear that terminology. A quadratic is basically a second degree polynomial. A second degree polynomial. Okay? Which basically means the largest exponent you're going to see is a 2, right? We've talked about degree, but a quadratic is a second degree polynomial. And we did a lot of those when we did the factoring stuff, especially the trinomial stuff, okay? We've seen a lot of second degree types of polynomials, but that's what a quadratic is. What is the general form of a quadratic? Well, that's what I've got on the screen right now. I would make sure you jot that down. That is the general form of a quadratic. ax squared plus bx plus c. ax squared plus bx plus c. Give you a second to jot that down. The things to kind of take away from this general form, and what we're going to primarily focus on today, is the a, the b, and the c. Okay? The thing that we need to kind of really pay attention to in this form,
what is the yellow?
second degree polynomial. Second degree polynomial. Guys, that value of a, that a is tied to that x squared. That squared term, that quadratic term, that a value is always going to come with that squared term. Okay? The b is always going to come with the single x or the single variable, okay? And the c is always going to be your constant number, which is your number that does not have any type of variable or letter with it, okay? And that's the big thing about that general form of that quadratic. A always comes with x squared, b always comes with x, and c is always your constant number, okay? So there's a quadratic trinomial, okay? 2x squared minus 4x plus 5. Which one of those numbers would be your a value? The 2 would be your a. What would be your b? Negative 4 would be your b. And what would be your c? C would be your 5. So your a would be 2, your b would be negative 4, and your c is going to be 5. If you can correctly identify those values today, then you're going to have a really good chance to be successful using this formula, which we're getting ready to get into. But that's kind of the first hurdle we've got to get over, is you being able to correctly identify those numbers out of that general quadratic. Okay? Questions? Everybody okay with that? Does everybody have what they need off this slide? Nope. Okay. That's what I need to know. Golly.
Oh, I got it.
We good? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. All righty. There it is. Okay. Quadratic formula. Jot this down. It will be on your worksheet as well, but this way you'll have it in your notes. I'll have it on the worksheet for you for today. That is x equals, that is a negative b. Guys, this is a plus or minus symbol, plus and minus. Okay, and we'll get to that. Negative b plus or minus, that is the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. And all that is over 2a. So I'll give you a second to jot that down. The one thing about the quadratic formula, when it comes to solving quadratic expressions, guys, the quadratic formula always works, okay? Sometimes it's kind of a longer way to go, but There are various ways to solve quadratics. Some of those methods only work in certain instances. Guys, the quadratic formula always works. It's kind of a sure thing, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. All right? Guys, and when you solve a quadratic, and I've got this question down here, how many answers should I expect? You should expect 2 answers. Okay? You should expect 2 answers. A quadratic is a degree 2. Guys, degree will talk to you about how many answers you should expect. Okay? So with a quadratic being a degree 2 expression, we're going to expect 2 results out of these problems today. Okay? So that's what we're going to anticipate. All right? But as you can see, once we identify A, B, and C, you guys are just going to plug numbers into this formula. We're using a formula. And really what this is going to boil down to today is, can you keep up with stuff? Okay? Can you stay organized and keep up with just a bunch of numbers? And if you can do that, it's really not too bad. Okay? So it's a little bit of a lesson in organization today. All right? Everybody got what they need here? Everybody good? All right. Okay, let's get into one. All right? So I've got the formula on the left, which you should have. On the right, that is the quadratic that we are going to solve. Okay? That's the one we're going to run through the formula. So jot that quadratic down. X squared minus 8x minus 9 equals 0. When we solve these quadratics, they need to be set equal to 0, and I think I've done that for you today, so everything's going to be really straightforward. We're just going to get the basic workings of this formula. The first thing you're going to need to do is we're going to have to identify A, B, and C from this quadratic expression. Guys, what's the number in front of x squared? 1. Right? We don't see a number there, right? So the only number that we can assume and that's understood is a 1. So that is a 1x squared. So the A value is going to be that 1 right there. What about B? What's the value of B?
8.
Negative 8. Negative 8. There's my A. Here's my B. Make sure you pick up the minus sign with that 8 like a negative. So the B value is negative 8. And what do you think about C? Negative 9. Good. There's our C value. And guys, really and truly, if we don't identify A, B, and C correctly, if you put bad information in that formula, I mean, it's not going to be right. I mean, so we have to be able to get the A, the B, and the C correct from the get-go. Is everybody good where those 3 numbers came from? Everybody good with that? Guys, once you find those 3 numbers, we're going to go plug them into this formula over here. So, and again, let me reemphasize, anytime you replace a variable with a number or anything, I would use a set of parentheses. So here we go. X equals, that's a built-in minus sign there. We're going to plug in B. That's all we're doing. We're plugging numbers in. All I'm doing is taking the A, the B, and the C, and I'm plugging them in to their respective places. And again, I would really encourage you to use parentheses wherever you replace a variable. Like I said, it's the quadratic formula is can you keep up with stuff? Can you keep up with stuff? Okay? Now notice right here, built-in minus sign, we plugged in a negative 8. What's going to happen to minus a negative here? Becomes a positive. So right here, that 8 is going to become positive 8. Plus or minus The formula has a built-in minus sign here, which is right there. The b value is -8, so that minus a negative, those two negatives are going to make themselves into a positive. Okay? Just kind of watch out for that. And again, one little sign mistake in these can kind of throw things off. So now, underneath the radical, -8 squared. What, guys, what's -8 times -8? 64. Guys, whatever you put in for b right there is getting squared. That means you are going to get a positive number right here. Okay? It's -8 squared. That is positive 64. Okay? Next. Okay, you guys see all this right here? I'm going to put it in yellow. That -4 times a times c. Those three things are getting multiplied together. Okay? There's a lot of people that will have a tendency to want to subtract 4 here first. You want to multiply all three of those things first. What is -4 times 1? -4. And -4 times -9? Positive 36. That -4 AC, those three things are getting multiplied together. And that gives me positive 36. And then, of course, down there on the bottom, you've got 2 times 1, which is 2. So now we're just kind of collecting stuff. We're starting to do some very simple calculations, and we're just keeping up with stuff. Is everybody okay with where all these numbers are coming from thus far? Which one? The 4? This 4? That is part of your formula. -4 AC, that -4 will always be there. You good? Okay. All right. Any other questions thus far? Okay, let's keep going. X equals 8 plus or minus square root 64 plus 36. Guys, that's 100 over 2. Most mistakes with the quadratic formula happen underneath that radical symbol. Because you're squaring something, you've got three things to multiply together, that's where a lot of the mistakes are made. Okay, so be careful under that radical. But the radical becomes 100. Now, we kind of talked about this the other day. Can you take the square root of 100? Is 100 a perfect square number? What's the square root of 100? 10. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go x equals 8 plus or minus 10 over 2. We can take the square root of 100. If I've got a perfect square number underneath that radical, take it. The square root of 100 is 10, and it comes out of the radical. So now you've got 8 plus or minus 10 all over 2. And then this is how we get the two answers. This is where the plus or minus symbol comes in. We've got 8 plus 10 over 2, and we've got 8 minus 10 over 2. What's 8 plus 10? 18. And what's 18 divided by 2?
9.
That's going to end up being 9. 8 plus 10 is 18 divided by 2. Got a 9. There's one answer. Over here, what's 8 minus 10? Negative 2. And what's negative 2 divided by 2? Negative 1. Negative 2 divided by positive 2, negative 1. That's where that plus minus symbol comes in. 8 plus 10, 18. Divided by 2, 9. 8 minus 10, negative 2, divided by 2, negative 1. There's our two answers. We're looking for two solutions. We got two solutions, 9 and negative 1. Can you keep up with stuff? I think you would agree. There's not really any type of calculation that I think we did in there that was just crazy. We did some multiplication. We squared a number. We did a little addition, subtraction. We did division. Just nothing crazy. It's just, can you keep up with all this stuff? Okay? There's just a lot going on. But, guys, the quadratic formula always works. Okay? Like I said, there's about 5 different ways to solve quadratics. Factoring, completing the square, quadratic formula, square root property, and graphing. Okay, you can do that. Some of those methods, factoring doesn't always work. Some things can't be factored. Complete the square can get kind of nasty if certain numbers aren't a certain way. Okay, square root property isn't always going to work very well. Guys, quadratic formula always works. Okay? Questions thus far? We're going to do another one. Everybody got what they need here? All right, let's do another one. Like I said, formula's there on the left. You guys, I think, have that. There's your quadratic there on the right. I think I've got everything coming to you pretty straightforward today as far as how you're going to be able to identify these numbers. And again, the first thing, what's going to be the value of A? 2, right? There's that number in front of x squared. There's your A value. What about B? Negative 7. There's my B value. B always comes with the x term. And my C value? Boom, negative 9. Everybody good with that? Pretty straightforward. Watch your signs. Guys, once you identify A, B, and C, let's go shove all this into the formula. So we're going to go x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. It's just a lot of stuff. If you go to your calculator, be careful about trying to put too much of this thing in there at once. I would do it in pieces on your calculator. Like I said, some of these calculators are pretty picky about order of operations and parentheses and all that, so I'd be careful about putting too much in there. Now, minus a negative 7, right out the gate. Minus a negative 7 becomes a positive 7. So x equals positive 7 plus or minus. Guys, what's negative 7 squared? 49. Positive. You're always going to get a positive number right there. I don't care if you put a positive number in there or a negative number. You're squaring it. You're getting a positive result. And then remember right here, we need to multiply all 3 of these things together. What's negative 4 times 2? Negative 8. And negative 8 times negative 9?
72.
Positive 72. All over 4. 2 times 2. Everybody good so far? let's go ahead and simplify the radical. So x equals 7 plus or minus root, what is that going to be? 72 and 49, 121, 121? Nice. And that is a 4 down there. Is 121 a perfect square number? It is. What's square root of 121? 11. So here we go. X equals 7 plus or minus 11 over 4. Take that square root. If they've got a perfect square there, great. Take it. Radical's gone. Here's our two answers. X equals 7 plus 11 over 4 and 7 minus 11 over 4. Thank you, big guy. Guys, what's 7 plus 11? 18 over 4. Now, does that divide evenly? It doesn't. So, guys, and that's okay. We've got a fractional answer. Can we reduce 18 over 4? To what? Divide them both by 2. Thank you. 9 over 2. There's one answer. Got it. And that's okay. Leave it improper. 9 over 2. Perfectly fine. 7 minus 11. Negative 4 divided by positive 4. Negative 1. Bingo. There's your two answers. 9 over 2 and negative 1. So sometimes it's not going to divide evenly. That's fine. Leave it fractional, but just make sure it's reduced. Questions? Again, no crazy calculations here. Pretty basic calculations. It's just stuff. It's a lot of crap. Keeping up with crap. You know, some people keep up with the Kardashians. We're keeping up with crap. All right, everybody got what they need here? Got one more. Let's do one more. Uno más. Here we go. Let's try this. Bless you.
Thank you.
Guys, what's our A value? 3. A is 3. What's our B value?
12.
There we go. Good. Negative 12. Negative 12 for your B value. And your C value? 4. A always comes with x squared. B is always with your x. C is your constant term. Make sure you pick up the minus or plus sign. That's going to dictate positive, negative for you. Everybody good with those three numbers? Let's go plug them in. Here's the hard part. Negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Whew. Use those parentheses. Stay organized. All right, what kind of 12 are we going to get there? Positive 12, right? Minus a negative. Guys, be careful about that. So that 12 is going to be positive. Now, under the radical, negative 12 squared. What's 12 squared, guys? 144. Good. 144. And let me say it again. That number is always going to be positive right there. Okay? Negative 4 times 3 times 4. You've got to multiply all three of those things together. Negative 4 times 3. Negative 12. And negative 12 times 4.
Negative 48.
Negative 48. Good. All over 2 times 3, which is 6. All right? What is 144 minus 48? 96. Like I said, most mistakes happen underneath that radical. Be careful under that radical, but I think we've got a good number here. 96 is solid. Now, is 96 a perfect square number? It's not. And that's what we spent time the other day doing, right? We said, look, if we get a number under that radical that's not perfect, we need to look at possibly simplifying that radical so that we can have exact answers, right? So 96, and I don't know if we had 96 on the assignment the other day, but basically if I take 96 and I start dividing it by perfect square numbers, start high, work low. 96 divided by 81, 96 divided by 64, 49, 36, 25, I think 16. I think you get down 16 is going to work, okay? So what we've got to do here with this 96 is we're going to go 12 plus or minus. That's going to be root 16 times root 6. We're going to rewrite, it's kind of what we learned the other day. Let's rewrite that radical 96 as root 16 times root 6. Let's rewrite it using a perfect square factor. And then I can you take the square root of 16?
No.
What's square root of 16? Check it out. We take the square root of the 16 now. It's the whole reason we rewrote this. We want to be able to do something. We take the square root of the 16. That becomes 4. And then we got the root 6 on the back end. We got the leftovers. So root 96 becomes 4 root 6. And that was that skill that we practiced on Monday. And that way, again, our answers are staying exact. We didn't have to get some kind of a decimal, and I've got some kind of decimal rounded off. These answers are going to be exact. Everybody okay with that step right there? Everybody good with where 4 root 6 came from? Okay? Now, the last thing here, guys, we essentially have an answer. Okay? There's not really much else we can do. The only thing left that we can do is I want you to look at all three of these numbers, 12, 4, and 6. Could you divide all three of those numbers by a common number? Divide them all by 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide all three of these by a 2. 6 plus or minus 2 root 6 all over 3. Let me squish that in there. And oddly enough, my opinion, if you can't take the square root, if you don't have a perfect square underneath this radical, it's almost easier. Because this is it. 6 plus 2 root 6 over 3 is one answer. 6 minus 2 root 6 over 3 would be the other answer. I mean, I can go figure that out if I need to, but that's it, guys. That's the best I can do. Those are your 2 answers. Ta-da. Get a perfect square, take it, go figure out the two answers, but if you don't have a perfect square, we need to see if we can simplify it. If we can't, we need to, okay? And then, that's it. What do you think? Feel good about it? Feel all right? Yeah, it's just stuff, just keeping up with stuff. If you're keeping up with stuff pretty well, pretty organized in your work, I really don't think you'll have any issues. But just want to have a little bit of a working knowledge of the quadratic formula, kind of the nuts and bolts of it, how we can apply the numbers to it, where we get the numbers for it. I think that's important, obviously. All right, we good? Fantastic. All right.